Okay, here are the walls to the Vatican, I believe. Just gotta go straight down that way. All of this is Vatican City. Okay, we are in the online ticket line. This is the line for no tickets. This is the line for people with online tickets. These are all Korean tourists. They've been probably waiting in line a long time. Got here early. Okay, we arrived just in time. And we got past all those people waiting in line. We went through the express line, got through the security, all of that in less than like 4 minutes. We're doing a guided tour because that was the only one available when I was reserving it. And I'll put the price on the screen.
But he's a sovereign, and that explains lots of things. Among the people court, there are people with the real features on. So when those were painted, the artists who came from Florence to paint the whole thing, the last book of the Gospel, right?
Revelations.
Revelation. The book of Revelation, according to Christian tradition, Christ is coming to be the Redeemer. One came back, so he's turning in the keys to the boss. All right, mission accomplished. You can take over from here on. And if you look at Michelangelo's angels raising up the saved one, whether they're black or white, the angels that Michelangelo painted, they don't look like the real angels the angels that we see conventionally in the Renaissance with blonde hair and blue eyes and wings, but rather look like Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of angels. This guy. This is the judge of the underworld. But if you look at him clearly, he's got human features. He's got a real human details. He's got exactly the same features of one of the Pope's staff members. And his name was Biagio da Cesena. That was the real name of the guy. And he was a Pope Master of Ceremony. But he was a Michelangelo's nightmare. So as a punishment, Michelangelo's going to paint him in hell. And he's going to give him a couple of donkey's ears and a snake biting his privates. Because he would criticize him. So Michelangelo said, all right, Biagio, just you wait. And he made him this.
This guide is fantastic. He was giving us a history of the Vatican. Alright, the tour is over. I had a nice brunch. I re-entered the museum from the Sistine Chapel. And let me try to summarize the tour. By the way, we're at the Pinecone Courtyard. There's the pine cone right there behind me. And that globe is a modern globe, I think, given to Pope John Paul II. The pine cone is 2,000 years old. It stood in front of the Pantheon, and it was a symbol of fertility. So, great tour. The guide was really entertaining, and he gave a summary of the history of the Vatican. So, this was a place where Peter, one of the disciples, the main disciple of Jesus, was put to death by Nero. So on the ground where he was put to death, they built a small church. and eventually got into a bigger church. And 500 years ago, Pope 16th, I'll put the correct pronunciation spelling on the screen. So Pope Sixtus decided to create private apartments that became the Vatican Museum. That was 500 years ago. This is why it's called the Sistine Chapel. Pope Sixtus started the commission to build the Sistine Chapel and the private apartments. He had the habit of making his nephews cardinals. And the Italian word for nephew, I believe, is nepotine. And this is how we get the word nepotism, because he put his relatives as cardinals, and eventually one of them became the next pope, Julius. So Pope Julius, he commissioned the works on the Sistine Chapel. But first, I gotta first talk about Peter. And Peter is featured in a lot of the paintings. Right here, that's Peter getting the keys from Jesus. He's getting the keys to earth and keys to heaven. This was painted not by Michelangelo, by someone else, but he's also featured in other paintings too. So here's Peter again in the Last Judgment by Michelangelo, giving back the keys to Jesus during the Last Judgment. This is a scene from the Revelations. This is when everyone's going to get judged. The righteous and the believers get taken up by angels to heaven. These are the people going to hell. This scene is from Dante, the Hell. And this person here, I forget the name, but there was a person that was giving hell to Michelangelo, and he decided to make the depiction of the main guy in hell that person. That person asked the Pope to remove his face. The Pope said, you know, whatever's in the Vatican he could do, but this is not in the Vatican. It's with the kingdom of heaven now, so it is not under his control. So this is supposed to be a portrait of Michelangelo, and Jesus was modeled after Apollo Belvedere, which is also featured here in the Vatican Museum. Apollo Belvedere was also the model for Michelangelo's David. So here's a close-up view. Close-up view of the main guy in hell. He was modeled after one of the head guys who was giving Michelangelo hell. So this was Michelangelo's later work. He painted this like 40 years after he did the Sistine Chapel. Here's the Sistine Chapel. We can't photograph or video in the Sistine Chapel, so you got to take a look at it here. So I didn't know this, but here, this became the model for ET. It looks obvious there, but it's really clever because in ET, the human touches an extraterrestrial. And here, God is an extraterrestrial. So Michelangelo didn't have Adam and God touching fingers, because before Adam touched God's fingers, he had free will. He could choose not to touch it. He's getting all the powers from God when he touches it. All of this are from the Old Testament, all around us. And he painted this while he was standing up. He didn't lie down and paint it. And he painted all this himself. I think it took 20 years to paint. And then much later, when he was near his end of his career, he painted the Last Judgment. And the side panels were all painted by someone else, like 20 years before that. So here's the Sistine Chapel. You can't video it, but every time I go there, I've probably seen the Sistine Chapel 3 times, maybe 4 times. It's incredible how one person painted all of that. The colors look a little more dingy than I remember it being. So I guess, you know, memory makes the painting appear more brighter or magical. So the Sistine Chapel, the paintings were commissioned by Pope Sixtus's nephew, Julius. So Julius commissioned the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and then the Last Judgment was commissioned by the Pope after him. I forget the guy's name. But let's continue on to the museum. By the way, this Vatican City is started in one small corner. It's about 360 acres, which is not really large considering it's a separate nation, considered to be a separate nation. It has its own radio station, hospital, shopping centers, supermarket. It's like its own town. Here's a closer look at the pine cone. This was in front of the Pantheon, symbol of fertility. Let's go look at the rotating sphere made out of metal. Okay, so this is a rotating sphere. I believe it was given as a gift to Pope John Paul II for his 50th Jubilee. And a little more history about the Vatican. So when Peter was murdered, I think he was crucified upside down, if I'm not correct, right here in these grounds. Back then, Christianity was illegal, but Emperor Constantine made it not only legal, but the official state religion. And that's when they decided to erect a small church here, which eventually became a huge church. The dome of St. Peter's, you can see right there, it is not the widest in diameter. I did not know this, but the widest in diameter is still the Pantheon, the one built like 1,900 years ago. It is the widest dome that's ever been created and still standing, which is amazing.